Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kathamriyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadhi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha Ananda Lilamaya Vigrahaya Hemavadivya Chavisundaraya Tasmai Mahaprema Rasapradaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste. Before I begin, I would want to express my heartfelt gratitude at the lotus feet of my most worshipable spiritual master, Shri Srimad Srila Radha Govinda Das Goswami Maharaj, because of whose mercy I have been bestowed upon this privilege of practicing Krishna Bhakti in this rare human form. Secondly, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude at the lotus feet of Shri Srimad Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who has given all of us this most ripened, juicy fruit, the mango fruit of Vedic wisdom, called as the Srimad Bhagavatam. And lastly, I want to prostrate at the lotus feet of all the assembled devotees and beg and pray for your best wishes so that I may attempt to speak some favorable words in the glorification of today's topic. Please accept my very humble obeisances. Vansha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
The Srimad Bhagavatam, it says, Shrinvatam Shraddhaya Nityam Grunnatham Swacheshtitam Kalena na atidirgena Bhagavan Vishateridhim. In the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami presents this very beautiful verse which glorifies Srimad Bhagavatam. Because we always see it as a custom that before we begin discussing Srimad Bhagavatam, we always discuss about the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. We see the general tendencies, if we are told to do something, the first question that we have is, isse mujhe kya milega? What will I get? If I do it, what will I get out of it? So Shukadeva Goswami knows this mentality of the jivas of Kali, and for that he time and again hammers different verses that glorify Srimad Bhagavatam. What will someone get by hearing and reading Srimad Bhagavatam? So Shukadeva Goswami in the second canto he says, Shrinvatam Shraddhaya Nityam. Shrinvatam means to hear. How to hear? Shraddhaya, with faith, and Nityam, every day. Grunnatham Swacheshtitam. Cheshtitam in Hindi we say cheshta karna, means to apply, application part. So Grunnatham Swacheshtitam means by hearing with faith the glories of Sri Krishna and the Srimad Bhagavatam, we try to apply that in our life. So, Shrunvatam Shraddhayam Nityam. Nityam, as we discussed, is every day. Actually, the actual translation, Sanskrit translation of Nityam is every moment, every second. But Kali Yuga translation is once a day. Maybe future translators will come and say once a week, once a month, once a year. But actually Nitya means every day, every second, every moment. But Kali Yuga we take the practical understanding. So Shrunvatam Shraddhaya Nityam, we hear at least once a day. If not every moment, at least once a day. Shrunvatam Shraddhaya Nityam Grunnatham Swacheshtitam, and we try to put that into practice in our real life. What happens for someone who hears with faith and tries to put that into practice in real life? Kalena. Kala means time, yes. Kalena na ati dirghena. Dirgha means long. We say dirgha ayu. Generally when blessings are given, we say dirgha ayu. But Shukadeva Goswami says, Kalena na ati dirghena. Dirgha means long. Ati dirgha means very long. Very long. But na ati dirghena, which means not very quick, which means very fast. Very fast. So Kalena na ati dirghena. Not a lot of time, but very fast. What happens? Someone who hears Srimad Bhagavatam with faith and puts that into practice, very soon Bhagavan Vishate Ridhim, the Supreme Lord, is established in the heart. So Shukadeva Goswami gives this promise that anyone who reads and hears Srimad Bhagavatam at least once a day, if not more, at least once a day. Because we find Srila Prabhupada would also make this point many times that the disciples and the followers at least once a day, at least 1 hour, they should read Srimad Bhagavatam. This was Prabhupada's standard. And someone who reads and studies Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavan Vishyate Ridhim, the Lord is situated in the heart. Srila Prabhupada was once at one place and Shrutakirti Prabhu, the famous servant of Prabhupada who served Prabhupada the most. So Shrutakirti Prabhu was serving Prabhupada and Prabhupada had asked him to read Srimad Bhagavatam. So he was reading Srimad Bhagavatam verse after verse, translation after translation, purport after purport. And Prabhupada was hearing. But interestingly, Prabhupada's eyes was closed. We don't take inspiration from that, but just as a matter of example, Prabhupada's eyes were closed. And Shrutakirti Prabhu was reading. So at one point when he was reading, he coughed. He read the first 2 lines and he coughed. And Prabhupada, whose eyes were closed, Prabhupada ended up finishing the last 2 lines. So Shrutakirti Prabhu was amazed. He said, Prabhupada, you're awake? I thought you were sleeping, your eyes were closed. And Prabhupada looked at him and said, sleeping during Bhagavatam? He said, only a fool will sleep during a Bhagavatam class. So that is a story. That's not a story I'm cooking up, but that's what Shrutakirti Prabhu said. It seems Prabhupada, he immediately shot back by saying, Bhagavatam is the nectarian words that emanated from the lotus lips of Shukadeva Goswami. Only someone who has not understood that importance will sleep during a Bhagavatam class.
Which verse is this, Prabhu? Shrunvatam Shraddhaya Nityam?
This is Canto 2, Chapter 3. I don't remember the exact number, but I can give it later.
Thank you.
So very soon, the Supreme Lord, Swacheshtam Kalena na ati dirghena Bhagavan Vishate Ridhim. The Lord gets manifested in the heart. And actually we see the aim of human life is only this. The Supreme Lord has to be situated in the heart and the Supreme Lord has to be situated in the mind. This is the only whole and soul purpose of human life. And we see Bhaktivinoda Thakur in one of his songs, he makes this point. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Mama mana mandire raho nishidina Krishna Murari Shri Krishna Murari. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying, Mama mana mandire, O Krishna Murari, O Murari, O killer of the demon Mura. Mama mana mandire, please reside in the temple of my mind, in the temple of my heart, in the temple of my body. This is the only prayer Bhaktivinoda Thakur is asking. So this is the only aim of human life, that the Supreme Lord is situated in the heart. But now there is a question. Shukadev Goswami is saying someone who hears and studies Bhagavatam, Krishna will be situated in the heart. But now the follow-up question is, we know Krishna is there in the heart of everyone. Even someone is an atheist, Krishna is present in his heart. So then how do we understand? If Krishna is anywhere there in the heart, why to study Bhagavatam? Right? Valid question. If the Lord is anywhere there, why to study Srimad Bhagavatam? The understanding is, even in the heart of a beef-eating butcher, who is into meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, gambling, who is into alcohol, even in his heart, Krishna is present. But in his heart, Krishna is present out of duty. It's duty bound. But in the heart of a devotee who is chanting and dancing constantly, Krishna says, Yatra gayanti madbhakta tatra tishtami Narada. In Canto 9, Chapter 4, he tells Narad Muni that, oh Narad Muni, Yatra gayanti madbhakta, wherever my devotees are chanting and dancing, I don't stay in their heart out of duty, but I stay in their heart by looking at the beauty of the devotee. By looking at the beauty of their devotion, I live in their heart. So in the heart of the devotees, Krishna is not duty bound. Zabardasti se nahi hai Bhagavan. He is living out of his own sweet will. But in the heart of the non-devotees and the atheistic people, he is duty bound. Zabardasti. He has no option. Now if we try to switch positions, and if we are given the chance to live in someone's heart, we must live in someone's heart for 2 or 3 days, and immediately after 2 or 3 days we will say, is there a better place to stay? Because this person's heart is so dirty. He commits 1 or 2 mistakes and we would want to switch to a better place. We would say, I am pretty sure there are good people in this world in whose heart I can live. But Krishna, bichare, he has no option. Whether someone is an atheist, whether someone is a butcher, whether someone believes in God, doesn't believe in God, Krishna is there in his heart. But in the heart of a devotee, it's not duty bound, it is beauty bound. So the aim of human life is to get that Supreme Lord Krishna in our heart by the beauty of our bhakti. And that happens through hearing and chanting Srimad Bhagavatam. And we see that when Krishna gives this human form of life, the only thing that everyone is looking out for, the only hunt is the hunt for happiness. Whether it is Prerna, Chetna, Prerna Festival, Chetna Festival, Youth Festival, one of the famous topics is the hunt for happiness. ये करने से प्रभु सुख मिलेगा क्या? iPhone 5s खरीदने से सुख मिलेगा? 6s खरीदने से सुख मिलेगा क्या प्रभु जी? If I buy a new house, will I get happiness? Constantly the hunt is how I can get more and more happiness. But the Shastras, they very beautifully say that just imagine that there is a dog, and this dog, it's a rainy day, and this dog is looking out, is very hungry and is looking out to eat something in a trash can, and that too, it's not just a dry trash can, it's a wet trash can. It's a rainy day, it is hungry and it is looking in the trash can. And you at a distance, you are seeing the whole scenario. Wouldn't we feel bad? Why? Because the dog is having the right propensity, is having the right intention, but is searching in the wrong place. It can fulfill the hunger of its stomach when it searches in the right place. But interestingly, because of low intelligence, that dog is searching for the right thing in the wrong place. This is our situation. We are searching for the right thing, that is happiness, in the wrong place, that is the material world, that place where happiness never exists. Krishna time and again in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Dukkhalayam ashashvatam. This place is filled with dukkha, it is filled with sorrow, and it is ashashvat, it is temporary. But we find in the supreme spiritual world, the happiness that is described is not temporary. It is increasing at every step. Anandam buddhivardhanam pratipadam. It is increasing at every step. Now for example, we all had cake. When we had the first cake, the enthusiasm was sky high. What happened by the time we were offered the second cake? The enthusiasm decreased. By the time it's third piece of cake, the enthusiasm is practically zero. It is the same piece of cake which we initially hankered for, but by the time it was the third piece of cake, there is practically no desire to eat it. So in this world, the happiness keeps on decreasing constantly. But in the spiritual world, it is anandam buddhivardhanam pratipadam. It is constantly increasing. Just imagine you are given one slice of pizza, and you eat that one slice of pizza, and your hankering to eat the second slice of pizza goes higher. And then the hankering to eat the third slice of pizza goes even higher. And then the hankering to eat fourth slice of pizza goes even higher. We can't even imagine. Because such happiness doesn't exist in this world. This happiness is the happiness of the spiritual world. It is increasing at every step. Just imagine, what is our definition of happiness? A new phone, a new house, a new car. We buy a car today, and what happens after a week? What happens after a month? What happens after a year? Forget it. That same car which we hankered for, that Tesla, that SUV which we hankered for, after 1 year, it somehow doesn't give the same happiness. That same car which gave us happiness before is not giving us happiness. So our definition of happiness is not happiness. It is absence of distress. Like for example, how many of us have experienced headache at least once? Everyone? What do we do when there is a headache? We pop in a pill. Whether it's an ibuprofen or paracetamol or whatever, we pop in a pill. When we pop a pill, what happens? The headache is still there, but the medicine works in such a way that it numbs the veins. Headache is still there. Our head is still paining. But the medicine works in such a way that we are not experiencing it, but it is still there. This is our definition of happiness. It is complete distress, 2-3 hours. We see people go for a movie. 3 hours they watch a movie. And what happens after that? Punar mushiko bhava. Back to square one. Again, the same problems, the same misery. Someone buys a new house, buys a new car. There is happiness for some time. Back to the same thing. We buy a new laptop. 1 week, 2 weeks, back to the same thing. So the happiness, the point I'm trying to reiterate is the happiness of this world keeps decreasing constantly. But the happiness of the spiritual world is increasing constantly. And this happiness that we are all looking out for, the hunt for happiness that we have, it is not something that we have to look for outside. Bahar dekhne ki avashyakta nahi hai. Many times we see that if I buy a phone, if I buy a car, if I buy a gadget, that gadget is going to give me happiness. But we fail miserably. That gadget doesn't give us happiness. That substance doesn't give us happiness. So we look for happiness in material objects. We look for happiness in things outside. But guess what? The Shastras say that all of us, whether it's a child, whether it's an adult, whether it's an old, male, female, whoever it is, all of us present in this room have 3 qualities. Sat, Chit and Ananda. Sat basically means eternal. All of us are eternal. We are Sat, but this body, it is Asat. It is not eternal. We have a manufacturing date and an expiring date. And the best thing is when we go out, we buy a product. When we look at the product, there is a manufacturing date, there is an expiry date. But the best thing about the human body is we know when it is manufactured, but none of us know when the system is going to get switched off. None of us know when the expiry date is. Kyunki yahan likha hai. And no one is able to read what is there here. So this body is asat, but eternally we are all sat. So there is a mismatch. And naturally anything that takes us towards death, we hate. Because we are eternal, anything that takes us towards death, we are hating it. Just think about it. Wrinkles, falling of teeth, white hair, Alzheimer's, diabetes, and so many others. We can have our own imagination. Anything that takes us towards death, we just hate it. And to avoid that, there is coloring of hair, there is facelift, there is dentures. So we hate to die, but we are forced to die. So this is the first quality. We are Sat. All of us are eternal, but because this body is Asat, there is a complete mismatch. And second, Chit. Chit means full of knowledge. But this body, Sharira Avidya Jal. Nahi, prasadam time nahi hai. We are already done with prasad. But this body is Sharira Avidya Jal. It is a network of complete ignorance. You may say, Arey nahi Prabhuji, memory is increasing. We started with KB, फिर MB हुआ, फिर GB हो. Prabhuji, आपको पता नहीं, अभी तो TB चालू है. Sure enough, अभी TB चालू है. We store all the memory in the laptop, but at the end, the person operating the laptop, his memory is decreasing. The memory of the laptop is increasing, but the person operating the laptop, his memory is decreasing. We store all the information in the laptop and finally end up forgetting the password to that laptop. And every one of us, at least once, would have done reset password. At least once. See, we have all done it. We are actually Chit, full of knowledge. But this body is Sharira Avidyajal. It is filled with ignorance. And third, Ananda, happiness. This is our constitutional right. We don't have to look for it outside. Andar hi hai. We are all happy. So of the three, we find someone may be Sat and someone may be Chit. But if there is no Ananda, there is no purpose of being Sat and Chit. So of the three, the Shastras say the most important is Ananda, happiness. And this is that happiness that we are constantly looking out for. And in our heart, there is this fear that we should not lose this happiness. So we time and again, we make endeavors for the future so that we don't lose that happiness. Think about it. 401k, Kung Fu, Karate, there is constant fear. Ye hua to Prabhuji wo hua to, Prabhuji aisa nahi hua to, Prabhuji aisa hua to. There is a constant fear that we are all plagued with, and we constantly keep thinking aage ka, ye hua to, wo hua to. Sometimes I give this example. Can everyone close your eyes for a few seconds? No, this is an exercise. Sona nahi hai. Sona nahi hai. It's
Permission granted.
प्रभु जी आप ही बोले आँख बंद करना, अभी नींद आ गया तो हमारी क्या गलती है? But just as a small exercise, can we all close our eyes? I hope after this exercise I don't hear snoring. Like Gauranga Prabhu says, Shravanam, Snoranam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Snoranam. Can we all close our eyes?
Yes.
Now just for a few minutes, think you're a tomato. Think you're a tomato. You're a red, nice, plump tomato. And the moment you think you're a tomato, you see that the world has fork, it has spoons, it has knives. Constantly, wherever you're going, you're a tomato. Wherever you're going, there is this fear that this knife will cut me, this fork will pierce me, this spoon will cut and eat me. Is it not? For those who are imagining they're a tomato, there is this constant fear. Now when you open your eyes, and bounce back to reality and see, wait a minute, I'm not a tomato, but I'm a human being. So naturally when you look at the knife, when you look at the fork, when you look at the spoon, there is no fear. Is it not? So fear rises from misidentification. Are you getting this point? Fear is arising from misidentification. When you think you're a tomato, that's when you see fork and spoons and knife, तभी डर लगता है. But when you open your eyes and bounce back to reality, you think, wait a minute, I'm not a tomato. So there is no reason I should be fearful of spoons, of fork and knives. So the point is fear arises out of misidentification. Now you may have a question that I asked you to open the verse and what am I speaking? This is the import to the first word of the verse bhayam, fear. Shukadev Goswami starts the verse by saying bhayam. And this bhayam, it's an umbrella of various things. Hunger, thirst, lamentation for something that is lost, hankering for something that we require. All of this comes under the umbrella of bhayam. Because Shukadev Goswami cannot add everything, he says bhayam. But the commentators to this verse, they say bhayam is an umbrella which includes everything. Anything that discomforts you comes under the umbrella of bhayam. There is at least one thing in all of our lives that discomforts us. ऐसा कोई विरला ही होगा जो ये कहे कि मेरे जिंदगी में तो कुछ प्रॉब्लम है ही नहीं. In everyone's life there is at least some discomfort. For someone it may be financial. For most it may be immigration. See, we are all in the same boat. For most people in the US, immigration is something that is always hovering over the head. So there is constant fear, there is constant bhayam. So this is the words that we are discussing. The first word is bhayam. Can we all chant this verse? We can have a call and response.
Yeah.
Bhayam dvitiyat bhiniveshata syat.
Bhayam dvitiyat bhiniveshata syat.
Ishadapetasya viparyayo smriti.
Ishadapetasya viparyayo smriti.
Tanmayato buddha bhajetam.
Tanmayato buddha bhajetam.
Bhaktya yesham gurudevatatma. Bhayam dvitiyat bhiniveshata syat. Ishadapetasya viparyayo smriti. Tanmayato buddha bhajetam. Bhaktya yesham gurudevatatma. Bhayam dvitiyat bhiniveshata syat. Ishadapetasya viparyayo smriti. Tanmayato buddha bhajetam. Bhaktya yesham gurudevatatma. Can we have a few volunteers from Prabhuji's, Mataji's and the children if possible? Feel free. This is not a temple hall. Even if we make mistakes, no one is seeing us. Yes, please.
Vayam divitiya viniveshata syat.
Bhayam dvitiya viniveshata syat.
Ishadapetasya viparyayo smriti.
Ishadapetasya viparyayo smriti.
Tanmayato buddha bhajetam. Bhaktya kayesham gurudevatama.
Bhaktya yesham gurudevatatma. Avaniti, you understand?
Bhayam divitiya viniveshata syat.
Bhayam dvitiya viniveshata syat.
Ishadapetasya viparyayo smriti.
Ishadapetasya viparyayo smriti.
Tanmayato buddha bhajetam. Bhaktya kayesham gurudevatatma.
Someone from the Prabhuji's? Please.
Bhayam ditiya abhiniveshata syat.
Bhayam dvitiya viniveshata syat.
Ishapetasya viparyayo smriti.
विपर्ययो स्मृतिः
ईशानवेदस्य विपर्ययो स्मृतिः
तन्मायया तो बुधा भजेतं
तन्मायया तो बुधा भजेतं
भक्तैकयेषां गुरुदेवतात्मा
भक्तैकयेषां गुरुदेवतात्मा. Wonderful, bro. Wonderful. Anyone else from the Prabhujis?
भयां द्वितीया विनिवेशतस्य
भयान् विदेया निवेशतस्य
ईशादपेतस्य विपर्ययो स्मृतिः
ईशानवेदस्य विपर्ययो स्मृतिः
तन्मायया तो बुध भजेताम्
तन्मायया तो बुधा भजेतं
भक्त्यैकयेषां गुरुदेवतात्मा
भक्तैकयेषां गुरुदेवतात्मा.
भायं द्वितीया अभिनिवेशेत्स्यात्
भयान् विदेया निवेशतस्य
ईशादपेतस्य विपर्ययो स्मृतिः
ईशानवेदस्य विपर्ययो स्मृतिः
तन्मायया तो बुधा भजेताम्
तन्मायया तो बुधा भजेतं
भक्तैकयेषां गुरुदेवतात्मा
भक्तैकयेषां गुरुदेवतात्मा.
भयं द्वितीया विनेशत्सया
भयं द्वितीया निवेशतस्य
ईशादपेतस्य विपर्ययो स्मृतिः
ईशानवेदस्य विपर्ययो स्मृतिः
तन्मायया तो बुधा भजेतं
तन्मायया तो बुधा भजेतं
भक्त्यैकयेषां गुरुदेवतात्मा
भक्तैकयेषां गुरुदेवतात्मा. Mataji's.
भयं द्वितीया विनिवेशतस्य
भयं द्वितीया निवेशतस्य
ईशादपेतस्य विपर्ययो स्मृतिः
ईशानवेदस्य विपर्ययो स्मृतिः
तन्मायया तो बुध विजेताम्
तन्मायया तो बुधा भजेतं
भक्तैकयेषां गुरुदेवतात्मा
भक्तैकयेषां गुरुदेवतात्मा. Definitely.
भयं द्वितीया निवेशितस्य
भयं द्वितीया निवेशतस्य
ईशादपेतस्य विपर्ययो स्मृतिः
ईशानवेदस्य विपर्ययो स्मृतिः
तन्मायया तो बुधा भजेताम्
तन्मायया तो बुधा भजेतं
भक्तैकयेषं गुरुदेवतात्मा
भक्तैकयेषां गुरुदेवतात्मा.
भयं द्वितीया विनिवेशतस्य
one last chant.
Bhayam.
Yeah. Oh yes, Prabhuji.
Bhayam Dvitiya Abhiniveshata Syat. Ishadavetasya Viparyayo Smrite. Tanmayayato Buddha Avejetam. Bhaktyekayesham Gurudevatatma.
Kavya? So I think by now most of us would have, fair enough, we would have understood, we would have by hearted this verse. So we started with bhayam, which means fear. Now we'll see why does fear arise. All of us have fear, anxieties, all of us have. Why does fear arise? Dvitiya abhiniveshataha. Two words. Dvitiya abhiniveshataha. Abhiniveshataha means absorption. Dvitiya means second. One is called prathama and two is called dvitiya. So dvitiya abhiniveshataha, which means the mind is absorbed on the second. Fear arises when the mind is absorbed on the second. Now what does this mean? Actually, all that exists is only Krishna. At the start of creation, the person who's existing is Krishna. At the time of destruction, the person who's existing is Krishna. The person behind creation is Krishna. The person behind destruction is Krishna. The person at the start of creation and at the time of destruction is Krishna. In between also the person who's existing is Krishna. The person who's present in every atom, every molecule is Krishna. The person who gives the intelligence to the scientist of this world is Krishna. The person who gives ability to the scientist is Krishna. The scientists convert one substance, that is Krishna, to another substance, that is Krishna, and the end result that they form, that is also Krishna. So all that is present in this world is only and only Krishna. It starts with Krishna, the middle is Krishna, and it also ends with Krishna. But look at our ill fortune, that Krishna who is present at all times, at all circumstances, at all times possible, we fail to see that Krishna even in one place. Everything that is existing, only Krishna. Every atom Krishna is present. But look at our predicament, our ill fortune. We fail to see that Krishna even in one place. Ek jagah mein bhi nahi dikhta. For Pralhad, he saw that Krishna even in a pillar. But for us, even at one place, it's very difficult. So that is why Shastras say there are three kinds of devotees. First, Kanishtha. Who is a Kanishtha devotee? He sees
Krishna in the temple.
Aha, very nice. Where did we hear this? Basics, acha, okay. Madhav Chandra Prabhu had covered this?
I think they all have done.
Pata hai. Three kinds of devotees. First is Kanishtha. Now the characteristics, so this is like a litmus test. We don't have to reveal, but by the time we discuss Kanishtha, Madhyam, Uttam, we will know where we are placed. So I am not trying to scare, but teen hote we will know. Doodh ka doodh, pani ka pani ho jayega. First is Kanishtha. Kanishtha devotee sees the Lord in the deity, not with eyes, with faith, with Shraddha. He has heard from the scriptures that Krishna is present in the deity. Through faith he sees, but he doesn't see Krishna in the deity. Absolutely no realization in the heart. But he has some little faith. But this faith is also very weak. Like we say, for Raghunath Das Goswami, Kaviraj Goswami describes, his faith was like the lines on a rock. Come what may, Raghunath Das Goswami had such strong faith that it was difficult to erase those lines on a rock. For a Kanishtha, very weak faith, Komal Shraddha. If someone comes to him and says that actually Prabhu, Krishna is not there in the deity. Because if Krishna is there in the deity, why is bad thing happening to good people? अगर भगवान है, अगर तुम्हारा भगवान सच में है, why is COVID happening? Why are people dying? Why are kids dying? And this Kanishta devotee who has just seen Krishna through years, through faith, when this point is raised, his faith will wobble and double. He will say, actually you're right, Krishna is not present. Because if Krishna is present, why is Krishna not reciprocating? I am doing bhakti for so many years, he is not reciprocating. That means he is just stone. So Kanishta sees the Lord through faith, and that too very, very weak faith, very Komal Shraddha. And to add to it, he may see the Supreme Lord in the deity through faith, but he is fully convinced that Krishna is not present in the heart of anyone. That is why he will go around criticizing everyone. Talking behind the back, gossiping, criticizing. This is like the hallmark characteristic of a Kanishta, because he doesn't see Krishna in the heart. Second, Madhyam. Madhyam means intermediate stage. Madhyamadhikari sees Krishna in the deity. I am saying sees. He sees Krishna in the deity. So till the time we have not seen Krishna in the deity, we have not even entered the school of Madhyam. People may call us that we are now very exalted and very advanced devotees. But Shastra said till the time you don't see Krishna seen in the deity, till that time we have not even entered the school of Madhyam. The 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, in fact 9 verses from here, Shukadeva Goswami speaks about Madhyamadhikari. Shukadeva Goswami says, Ishware tad adhineshu balisheshu dvishatsu cha prema maitri kripopeksha ya karoti sa madhyama. He says a Madhyamadhikari is someone who deals with 4 kinds of people and has 4 characteristics with them. First, Ishwara, he deals with Krishna. Second, he deals with those who are of equal status. Third, he deals with those who are junior to him. And fourth, he deals with those who are envious. What are his dealings? Prema. With Ishvara, with the Lord, his dealing is prema, with that of love. Prema, maitri, with those who are on equal status, it is friendship. Prema, maitri, kripa, those who are junior, he showers mercy. And fourth, for those who are envious, upeksha, he keeps distance. So a Madhyamadhikari serves an envious person by keeping distance. Why? Because if the Madhyamadhikari is too close to an envious person, the envious person will end up criticizing the Madhyamadhikari. So that the envious person doesn't get Vaishnava aparadh, the Madhyamadhikari serves him by keeping a distance. This is the magnanimity of a Madhyam. So he deals with 4 kinds of people. First, Ishvara, Krishna. Second, those who are equals, peers. Third, juniors. And fourth, envious. And what are the dealings with Krishna? Prema, that is love. With equal, maitri, friendship. With juniors, kripa. And with envious, he gives a distance. So 11 to 46, Shukadeva Goswami speaks about a Madhyamadhikari. So the point I am making is Madhyam is someone who sees Krishna in the deity. And a Madhyamadhikari is called as a Hamsa. Hamsa means a swan. Now the swan has a characteristic. What is the characteristic? You give a mixture of milk and water. It can separate milk from water or water from milk. So Madhyamadhikari is called as a Hamsa. Why? Because if he is given a mixture of material things and spiritual things, he sees material, he sees spiritual, but he only picks up spiritual and leaves behind material. He sees both of them, but picks only spiritual. So he is called as a Hamsa. But the third kind of a devotee is called as Uttam, first class devotee. Uttamadhikari not only sees Krishna in the deity, he not only sees Krishna in the heart of everyone, but he is called as Paramahamsa, topmost swan. Why? Because Hamsa is someone who sees material, who sees spiritual, keeps aside material, takes spiritual. Paramahamsa is someone who at all times, at all places, at all circumstances only sees spiritual. At every place he only sees Krishna. He doesn't see material anything. Har jagah he sees only Bhagavan. Give me an example of such a person who sees only Krishna in the... another example? Pralhad Maharaj. Yes, we celebrated Narsingha Chaturdashi. Pralhad Maharaj is a characteristic, perfect example of an Uttam who always saw Krishna at all places. So this is the third kind of Uttam Adhikari. And Krishna, in the Bhagavad Gita, he says that such a person is extremely rare. Give me a verse from the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says this, that such a person is extremely rare. Who sees Vasudeva at all places. What is the start? Thank you, Prabhu. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyate Vasudevam sarvam iti. What is the fourth line? Sa Mahatma Sudurlava. Such a Mahatma, such an Uttam Adhikari is very rare. Who sees Vasudeva at all places. Vasudeva sarvam iti. Krishna doesn't just say he sees Vasudeva at one place. Sarvam. At all places, at all times, he sees only Vasudeva, he sees only Krishna. Give me another verse from the Bhagavad Gita that reiterates the same point. It starts with yo. Not the English wala yo, but it starts with yo. Prabhuji is on fire. Yo maam pashyati sarvatra sarvatra sarvam cha mai pashyati. Yes, Krishna says. Prabhuji and Mataji are like in full flow today. Yes, the same point is reiterated that a Mahatma and Uttam Adhikari is someone who sees Krishna at all places. So now we can do the litmus check. We can test whether we are in Kanishtha, whether we are in Madhyam, or whether we are in Uttam. We may have been in the moment for 10, 15, 20 years, but at the end of the day, what Shastra says, that is the ultimate truth. As it is. So till the time we don't see Krishna in the deity, we have still not entered the school of Madhyam Adhikari. We are still in the school of Kanishtha. And we see in the Shastra, there are so many examples, there are so many personalities who demonstrate this mood of seeing Krishna at all places. Interestingly, today is the disappearance day of Ramananda Rai. Ramananda Rai is one of the close associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is not different from Vishaka Sakhi. Ramananda Rai, the Gaur Gondadesha Deepika describes Ramananda Rai is a combination of four personalities. Arjun Pandava, Arjun Sakhā, Arjuniya Gopi and Vishaka Sakhi. All four fused together to form Ramananda Rai. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was in Gambhira, in his final, most esoteric pastimes, he was there with Ramananda Rai and Swarup Damodar, Lalita and Vishaka. So Ramananda Rai, I oftentimes make this point, Ramananda Rai would teach dance to young girls. He would teach dance to young girls, and we find whenever dance has to be taught, we always have to hold their hand. At least in the start, we have to hold their hand and teach them that this is how you dance, this is the basics, etc. So Ramananda Rai would teach dance to them, and he would hold the hands of young girls and teach them. But Ramananda Rai had this characteristic that even though he would hold their hands and teach them dance, there would be no effect of Kamadev. Instead, there would be effect of the transcendental Kamadev, that is Madan Mohan. There would be no effect of Madan, but there would be effect of Madan Mohan. Even when he would touch the hand of the girls and teach them dance, he would remember Krishna. He would see Krishna in them. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes to Godavari to meet Rai Ramananda, in the famous Rai Ramananda Samvad, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu we find, Mahaprabhu transforms himself multiple times. So when Ramananda Rai sees this, he says, Pahila dekhila tumar sannyasi swarup, ebe tuma dekhi moy shama goparup. Ramananda Rai says, my dear Lord, Pahila dekhila tumar sannyasi swarup. First I saw you, you are a sannyasi. Ebe tuma dekhe moy shama goparup. Now you are like a Sham Gop, you are like Krishna. First you look like sannyasi, now you are looking like Krishna. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he heard this, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, oh Ramananda Rai, you are so exalted. You are able to see Krishna at all places. I am actually not transforming, but you are able to see Krishna at all places. Actually, the fact of the matter is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was transforming his Swarup. But he gave the credit to Ramananda Rai to prove this point that Ramananda Rai is an Uttam Adhikari who is seeing Krishna at all places. Pahila dekhila tumar sannyasi Swarup. Ebhe tuma dekhi moy shama goparup. First I see you as sannyasi, now you are as Sham Gop, you are as Krishna. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, oh Ramananda Rai, you are an Uttam Adhikari, you are able to see Krishna everywhere. So it's interesting that we are discussing about Uttam Adhikari on the day of the disappearance of Ramananda Rai, who is the best among the Uttam Adhikaris. Shri Ramananda Rai ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. So Ramananda Rai is one standout example from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Another example we find, Prabhupada was once at one place, and this was the initial days, and Prabhupada was sitting on the floor, and the floor was really very hot. We see, especially when we go during summer and we are doing a Govardhan Parikrama or Vrindavan Parikrama without slippers, by the time the Parikrama is done, our feet almost becomes like a chapati. It's like completely, there are blisters in our feet. So, Srila Prabhupada was sitting on the floor, initial days, and it was really hot. And the disciples, they came to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, we are extremely sorry. We don't have anything to offer. You are sitting on the floor and it's so hot. And Prabhupada said, no, it's not hot. This is the warm embrace. This is a warm lap of Krishna. What is the problem? I am sitting on the lap of Krishna. What is your problem? Another time Prabhupada was in San Francisco and they were on a morning walk. And it was, we know how cold America can get. And this was again initial days. And Prabhupada didn't have a sweater. And it was very windy. So they told Prabhupada that, Prabhupada, it's so windy. We are sorry, we don't have sweater to offer. And Prabhupada said, well, this is the cooling embrace of my Lord. This is the cooling embrace of Krishna. What is your problem? Krishna is embracing me. This is his embrace. What is your problem? This was Prabhupada. Even when he was sitting on a hot floor, or when he's blown away by the cold breeze of San Francisco, he's able to see Krishna at all places at all times. Matra sparshastu kautaya shita ushna sukha dukkhada agama pahino anityam tam titikshasva bharata. Whether it is hot or cold, Mahabhagavat, he remembers Krishna at all times, and Prabhupada is the standout example. So the point that we are discussing is, this is Prathama Abhinivesh, absorption in the first. What is first? Krishna. There is only one thing. In this world, there is only one thing, that is Krishna. And Ramananda Rai and Prabhupada are teaching by example that how to be absorbed in first. But our absorption is not Prathama Abhinivesh, it is Dvitiya Abhinivesh. Our mind is absorbed on the second, which means on things of this world, material things.
Like
First,
like cake and vada. I didn't get vada, you all get it.
Hearing the example, even the mic is giving Dandavat. So this is, that's fine, Rovi. So this is our state, Dvitiya Abhinivesh. Our mind is absorbed on the second. Instead of being absorbed on the first, that is Krishna, who is alone there at all places, our mind is not absorbed in Krishna, but Dvitiya Abhinivesh. Mind is absorbed on the second, which means not the first. So see how beautifully Shukadeva Goswami is giving, which has like so many deep aspects. And in just one flow Shukadeva Goswami is speaking, and Parikshit Maharaj is also understanding it. We need commentaries to understand. But Parikshit Maharaj was equally so exalted that he was able to resonate with the mood of his Guru Maharaj, Shukadeva Goswami. That's a perfect disciple. So that is Dvitiya Abhinivesh, which means bhayam, fear arises when the mind is absorbed on the second, which is things of this world. When the mind is constantly absorbed on material things, things of this world, and not on Krishna, that's when fear arises. So the next time we are having fear, we should remember this verse and tell ourselves, hammer ourselves, that there is fear in my life because I am not absorbed in thinking about Krishna. There is lack of absorption. Ramananda Rai and Prabhupada are teaching, whatever the circumstances, sukhe dukhe bhule nakho. Our acharyas say, whether in happiness or distress, don't forget the Supreme Lord. But Dviti Abhinivesh. So fear arises when the mind is absorbed on the second. Bhayam Dvitiya Abhinivesha Tasyad. Now we go to the second line. Mind is absorbed on the second. Why is mind absorbed on the second? Because of asmriti. So it is written smriti, but it is pronounced as asmriti. You see there is a dash, upar. So it's pronounced as asmriti. So because of asmriti, what does asmriti mean? Forgetfulness. Smriti means remembrance. Asmriti means forgetfulness. Because of forgetfulness, The mind is absorbed on the second. Because the mind is absorbed on the second, there is bhayam, fear. So we are going back in the verse now. So asmriti, which means forgetfulness. There is a very famous devotee by the name Dasya Bauri. Have you heard of the story of Dasya Bauri?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Who have not heard? मैं उठा सकता है ऐसे करेंगे तो मुझे दिखाई नहीं देगा either it's this or this ठीक है so what is that okay so there was a devotee by the name Dasya Bauri. So Dasya Bauri one day he came home and interestingly he is a devotee of Jagannath. So he came home and he was very hungry, so he told his wife that, is there something to eat? So his wife said, sure, you wash your hands, haath muh dho lo, sanitize kar lo, and then sit down. So he sat down, and the wife, she brought a mud pot, and she placed a mud pot. And because it was the evening time, the setting rays of the sun were directly hitting on the mud pot. So that mud pot, which was a little brown in color, because of the hitting sun rays, it became red in color. On top of that mud pot, she put rice. Rice is white in color. And uske upar, she put saag. Now, saag is green in color. But this saag was 3 days old. So it became black in color. So there was red. On top of red, there was white. On top of white, there was black. Dasya Bauri saw this. He said, Jagannath! He said, this is Jagannath. This is the eye of Jagannath. And the wife was perplexed. He said, what are you talking about? And Dasya Bauri started jumping and dancing. He started chanting, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Swami, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Swami, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Swami, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Swami, Jai Jagannath, Neelachala Bhagavan, Jai Jagannath ki Jai. He said, this is the eye of Jagannath. And for 24 hours, Dasya Bauri was jumping and dancing and singing Jagannath, Jagannath. And the wife was looking, what has happened? This guy was hungry and I gave him something to eat. And he's not eating, and for 24 hours he's jumping and dancing. So she called a tantric. So she thought that Dasya Bauri is haunted. There is ghost in him. So she called a tantric. We see in rural, we find tantrics, they have like a big peacock feather and usse bhoot ghost nikalte. So tantric was invited. And the tantric came. And when he looked at Dasya Bauri, he said, oh, I deal with such people every day. He told the wife, you go inside, within 10-15 minutes you will be alright, don't worry. So the wife went inside. After 15 minutes when she came out, there was not one madman, there were 2 madmen. Both the madmen were chanting, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Swami, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Swami, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath Bhagavan ki Jai. The wife came and she looked, wait a minute. I called you to remove the ghost from his body, but seems like now I have to call another tantric to remove the ghost from these 2 bodies. Dasya Bauri and this tantric were jumping and dancing and chanting the names of Jagannath. So then she invited another tantric. Another tantric came. And fortunately this tantric was a devotee. So he looked at Dasya Bauri and he understood that this is prema. This is ecstatic symptoms. So he told the wife that, don't worry, you go inside, I will make sure he comes, he's alright. And for the next 15-20 minutes, not 1 madman, not 2 madmen, 3 madmen now were chanting, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Swami, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Jai dancing and jumping and loudly crying the names of Jagannath. But because this third tantric was a devotee, he called the wife and he said, do one thing. The reason he's ecstatic is you gave a mud pot which is red in color because of the setting rays. On top of that there is white rice, and on top of that there is saag which is 3 days old, which means it is black. He is seeing this as the eye of Jagannath, and that's why he's getting ecstatic. My solution for this is you separate the mud pot and the rice in one and saag in another mud pot. So separate kar do. When he sees that separate, he will not remember Jagannath. So the wife agreed. And then the wife brought 2 mud pots. In one there was rice, in another there was saag. And when Dasi Bauri saw this, all this ecstatic prem, he came down. And after 48 hours Dasi Bauri had. Just by seeing rice and old saag, he remembered the eye of Jagannath. This was the level of Dasi Bauri. So it is not a smriti, this is constant smriti, always remembrance. Always remembering the Lord. Another example, Pralhad Maharaj. We find that Pralhad Maharaj was tormented by his father so much, Hiranyakashipu. When Pralhad Maharaj was put in the pit of snakes, he came out hale and hearty. He came out perfectly fine. And Hiranyakashipu was scratching his head thinking, how is it that these deadly cobras did not kill you? And at that time, Pralhad Maharaj, he says that, oh father, you don't understand that my father, that is Vishnu, he sleeps on the bed of Ananta. Ananta is snake, not different from a snake, Balaram Prabhu. And my father sleeps on Ananta, that is snake. So you are putting me in a pit of snakes. These snakes are very dear to my father, and naturally because I am the son of Vishnu, how do you think these snakes are going to harm me? So even when he was put in the pit of snakes, he was seeing Krishna. When he was put amidst fire, he came out absolutely fine. In fact, when Pralhad Maharaj was put in fire and when he came out, after he came out, he was radiating. He was molten gold. That fire which ended up killing Holika, it ended up illuminating. It ended up increasing the effulgence and the brilliance of Pralhad Maharaj. So Hiranyakashipu was thinking, she had a boon that she would not be killed by fire, but you didn't have a boon. How is it that you got saved? And Pralhad Maharaj said, my dear father, you don't understand. This fire is the mouth of my father. Because we see during Yajna, we put Ahuti. And that Ahuti, that Yajna that is there, that is considered the mouth of the Supreme Lord. That fire is considered the mouth of the Supreme Lord. So Pralhad Maharaj said, you put me in fire, but that fire is my father's mouth. How will my father kill me? He is my eternal father Vishnu. Another time, Pralhad Maharaj was given poison. And when he was given poison, Pralhad Maharaj was again perfectly fine. And when he came out, Hiranyakashipu was mad. He was thinking to himself, I have all the boons, but seems like this 5-year-old is not getting killed by snakes, not getting killed by oil, not getting killed by throwing from the cliff, not getting killed by fire. He is not even getting killed by poison. How is it? He asked Pralhad, how is it that you are not even getting killed by poison? And Pralhad Maharaj gives such a fantastic reply. Pralhad Maharaj says, O demoniac father, tatsadu manye asuravarya dehinam, O best among demons. Pralhad Maharaj sits on the lap of his father and says, my dear father, you are the best among demons. Look at his audacity, look at his guts. Why? Because he has the backing of the Supreme Lord. He doesn't fear. There is no bhayam. Because there is no dvitiya abhinivesh. Pralhad had no dvitiya abhinivesh. It was always absorption in Krishna. So he sits on the lap of his father Hiranyakashipu and he says, oh father, you gave me poison, but that poison is my uncle. Hiranyakashipu says, poison is your uncle? How is poison your uncle? Pralhad Maharaj says, wait a minute, let me explain. You remember Samudra Manthan pastime? Says, yes. In the Samudra Manthan pastime, there were so many things that came up. When the churning of the milk ocean was done, so many things came up. At that time, Lakshmi ji, goddess of fortune, also came. And from that same churning, poison also emanated, which Lord Shiva drank. So from that same ocean, Lakshmi also came and poison also came, which means Lakshmi and poison, they are like brother and sister. And who is Lakshmi? She is the consort of Vishnu. And who is Vishnu? Oh, he is my father. So poison is nothing but he is the brother of my mother, which means he is my uncle. And how can uncle kill me? Hiranyakashipu was thinking, what logic is this? How is he able to see Krishna even in poison? But he could. Unbelievable, right? How can someone see Krishna even in poison? That was Pralhad, all at 5 years of age. Perfect remembrance. We discussed about Ramananda Rai. We discussed about Pralhad Maharaj. We discussed about Prabhupada. But now let us come to our most worshipable Srimati Radharani Ki Jai! Srimati Radharani was in Braj. And Srimati Radharani was there amidst all the Braja Gopis. There was Lalita Sakhi, Vishaka Sakhi, and everyone was there. And Krishna was also present. Krishna was there, and Subal was there, Sridham was there, Stoka Krishna, Kinkani, Vasudam, Arjun Sakhā, and also Madhumangal. So all were present. And at that time, someone whispered, and they said, "Oh, Madhu has left. Madhu has left." When Radharani heard this, she started crying because she thought Madhusudan Krishna has left. She was weeping and weeping and weeping and weeping and weeping. And 70 feet of tears were formed just by her hearing that Madhu has left. Interestingly, Krishna had not left. Madhusudan Shri Krishna was there in front. What that message meant was Madhu, which means Madhu Mangal has left. But Radharani was so much in absorption, so much in Smriti, that just by hearing Madhu, she felt Madhu, Sudan Krishna has left. And she started crying and crying and crying. So much so that tears blocked her vision completely. And even though Madhusudan Krishna was present in front of her, Radharani couldn't see. That place in Brajmandal where this pastime occurred, when Radharani just heard Madhu has left and she shed her tears, 70 feet of tears, that place in Brajmandal is called as Prem Sarovar. That Sarovar, which was filled by the Prem of Radharani's tears of separation from Madhu, actually Madhu Mangal, but for her it was Madhusudan, is Prem Sarovar. So we find whether it is Pralhad Maharaj or whether it is Srimati Radharani, there is constant smriti, constant absorption in the Supreme Lord. I have a question here. There are 18 chapters in the Bhagavad Gita. There is no right or wrong in this. Feel free to shoot as to which chapter we feel is the most important. There is no right or wrong. Whichever we feel is the most important, feel free to shoot. 18. Why, Prabhu?
Because it's the conclusion.
Conclusion of Bhagavad Gita. Okay. Anyone?
Second.
Why second?
Summary.
Summary of Bhagavad Gita. Please don't tell me your lucky number. Prabhu ji, मेरा lucky number 3 है तो 3. Prabhu मेरा 5 lucky number है. 12th. Why, Prabhu?
Devotional service, Bhakti Yoga.
Okay. 10th. Why?
Because it says that everything is Krishna. Chaturshloki from Krishna.
Chatushloki. Okay. Anyone else with lucky numbers? और कोई है? Yes, na. Prabhu ji, you want to say?
Even 7th also says a similar thing, right? Everything is Krishna.
Bhakti Yoga?
7th chapter.
7th chapter. Okay. Anyone else?
Like he is the taste of water.
Everything
7th
is
chapter.
Huh. Anyone else?
First chapter.
Why?
Because it's the introduction to.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. If you ask me, I am not generalizing, it's not a blanket statement, but in my humble understanding, the first chapter is considered one of the most important chapters. Why? Because many times we skip the first chapter. Kyun? Because we think the first chapter is nothing but Panchajanyam, Rishikesham, Devadattam, Dhananjayam. Isse aage kuch hai hi nahi. We start from the second chapter because that is where Krishna speaks. But interestingly, we find in the first chapter, Arjuna is present in the same Rath as that of Krishna, but he is not happy. There is no Ananda. We were saying Satchit Ananda, we will go back to Krishna, there is Ananda, but Arjuna is there in the same Rath, he is not experiencing Ananda. His Gandiva is slipping, there is perspiration, he is not able to fight. How is it that Krishna is present in the same Rath, but he is still not experiencing bliss? Isn't it a good question? Krishna is present few meters, few centimeters you could say. Ekdam baaju mein khade hai. But still, he is not experiencing bliss. The Gandiva is falling from his hand. The reason is Arjuna. He tells Krishna that, Krishna, you take me to the problem, I will figure out a solution. Krishna, your job ends by taking me to the problem. You take me. Sena yor ubhayor madhya ratham sthapayame achyuta. Oh Achyuta, your duty ends when you take me to the middle of the battlefield. Uske aage jo solution hai, I will decide. You take me to the problem, I will decide the solution. But guess what? This fails. Why? Because Pralhad Maharaj, he says, material solutions to material problems creates a bigger problem. Why? Because if the problem is coming from this consciousness and the solution is also coming from this consciousness, it will never solve the problem. If the problem is coming from this consciousness, the solution has to come from a higher consciousness. So Arjuna, who saw the problem, was still not able to figure out a solution because the answer was coming from the same consciousness. But it is only in the second chapter, 2:7, Karpanya dosha pahata svabhava prichani tvam dharma samuda chetaha. He says, my dear Lord, I surrender. I tried my level best, but nahi ho raha hai. I saw the problem, but I am not able to find a solution. My dear Lord, Karpanya, I have a problem. Miser, I am miser. Miserliness. Karpanya dosha. This is my dosha, my dear Lord. Karpanya dosha bahata swabhava prichami. I am asking you, prichami. मैं पूछ रहा हूँ भगवान आपसे. Please help me. Prichami dham dharma samuda chetah. Then Krishna may ask that, what should I say? Arjuna says, Yash Shreya, whatever my dear Lord is good for me, you tell me that. Why? Shishyasteham. My dear Lord, I am your student. Please tell me whatever is good for me. Whatever is beneficial, please tell me that. So the point is, the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita from chapter 2 to chapter 18, they describe the solution. But what is the use of the solution if we don't know what the problem is? If we have the solution but we don't know what the problem is, what are we going to do with the solution? So the first chapter is very important because it describes the problem statement. And the remaining 17 chapters are the solution to that problem. So here in this verse we find asmriti means forgetfulness. Because of forgetfulness, what happens? Ishad apetasya viparyaha. Which means because of forgetfulness, we turn our back on Isha, which means the Supreme Lord. Because of asmriti, there is Ishad apetasya viparyaha. We turn our back on the Supreme Lord because of asmriti, because of forgetfulness. And because of forgetfulness, we turn our back. When we turn our back, our mind gets absorbed on the second. When the mind gets absorbed on the second, there is fear. Understand? When there is asmriti, forgetfulness, we naturally turn our back on Krishna. When we turn our back on Krishna, the mind gets absorbed on the second. When the mind gets absorbed on the second, naturally there is fear. So the first two lines of this verse is describing the problem statement. What the problem is. Now Shukadeva Goswami, after describing what the problem is, will explain the solution in the last two lines. So we understood the first two lines. So the problem here is asmriti. Yes, the problem here is asmriti, forgetfulness. It is vimukatha, bahirmukatha. We have turned our back on Krishna. And because of asmriti, because of forgetfulness, that's when everything is arising. So the root cause is forgetfulness. Now in third and fourth line, Shukadeva Goswami solves this mystery. He says, Tan mayayato buddha abhajetam. Buddha means intelligent. What should an intelligent person do? Tan mayayato buddha abhajetam. Sachinandan Maharaj would give a very beautiful example. When Sachinandan Maharaj was very small, he was afraid of dogs. Is there anyone who is afraid of dogs? Oh, so many. Oh, both Prabhuji and Mataji, both are afraid of dogs.
And then naturally she also.
Oh, Krishna. Okay, there are quite a few who are afraid of dogs. Of dogs? No? Oh, you also?
I had before.
Abhinay. Murli, afraid of dogs.
Falling for okay.
So Sachinandan Maharaj, he says when he was very small, he was afraid of dogs. So he would go to the house of his friend. This is like before Krishna consciousness, when he was very small. He would go to the house of his friend, and every time he would go to the house of his friend, that friend had a dog. Big dog. And every time that dog would be tied. Once when Sachinandan Maharaj went to his house, the friend was inside, the dog was untied. Govindam Adi Purusham. The dog started chasing. It was untied. It started chasing Sachinandan Maharaj. And Maharaj is running, and the dog is running. And this went on for such a long time. Finally, Sachinandan Maharaj told his friend, why don't you tell your dog that I am your friend? I come to your house every day. Can you tell him that I am your friend so that he doesn't chase me? Tell him that we both are friends. I'm not inimical to you. I'm not envious of you. Please tell your dog I am your friend. So then when the friend came, he nicely patted the dog. He did nicely patted the dog, and the dog understood, okay, that this person is my master's friend. Then when Sachinandan Maharaj came the next time, the dog didn't do anything. Sachinandan Maharaj would give this example, that Krishna is like that master, and that dog in this example denotes Maya, because she eternally belongs to Krishna. Give me a verse from the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna makes this point that Maya Devi belongs to him. Daivi Hesha Gunamaye Mama Maya Duratyaya Mamevaye Prapadyante Maya Meta Tarantite. Krishna says, Daivi Hesha Gunamaye Mama Maya Duratyaya. That Maya belongs to me. Just like that dog belonged to the friend, similarly Maya belongs to me. So Sachinandan Maharaj would give this example. Just like I told my friend to convince the dog that I am your friend, and from the next time the dog didn't chase me, he said similarly, those who do Krishna Bhakti, those who pray to the Supreme Lord, that Maya who eternally belongs to Krishna will never touch us. Just like that dog never again chased Sachinandan Maharaj. Maharaj said similarly, if someone prays wholeheartedly to Krishna, that Maya which is tormenting us constantly will never ever chase us. So you would say that a Buddha, an intelligent man, tan mayayato, should make sure that he makes Maya his friend. So we are always going to be in Maya. In this world, in the spiritual world, we are always going to be Maya. The difference, here it is Mahamaya, there it is Yoga Maya. Maya to Maya se पीछा नहीं छूटने वाला है. यहाँ Mahamaya है, वहाँ Yoga Maya. So he would give this example, a Buddha, an intelligent person, should try to make Maya his close friend. Tan Mayayato Buddha abhajetam. So he says, Tan Mayayato Buddha abhajetam bhaktyai kayesham guru devatatma. He says, there is asmriti, there is forgetfulness. Because of forgetfulness, there is ishad apetasya viparyaha. We turn our back on Krishna. When we turn our back on Krishna, there is dvitiya abhinivesh. The mind gets absorbed on the second. When the mind gets absorbed on the second, there is bhayam, there is fear. Now an intelligent man, what should an intelligent man do? Bhakti kayesham gurudevatatma. He should perform bhakti with complete steam and complete intensity unto the lotus feet of Sri Guru. Shukadev Goswami says this is the only solution to overcome forgetfulness, to overcome bhayam, to overcome our tendency of turning our back on Krishna. Performing Guru Bhakti. Bhakti kayesham gurudevatatma. Just like we see Krishna as deity, similarly one should see Sri Guru as not different from Sri Krishna. And we should worship that Sri Guru as one's deity. Ramanujacharya, who is the fountainhead of one of the Sampradayas, Ramanujacharya was at one place. And Ramanujacharya had this track record that whenever he went, he would make the whole village into disciples. The whole village would turn into disciples. That was the preaching ability of Ramanujacharya. Now we know how difficult preaching is. Preaching to Indians, preaching to Westerners, fulfilling the count of 50,000 in Seattle. It is so difficult to preach. Ramanujacharya was so exalted and so brilliant. Every village that he went, he would like sweep, like Jayapataka Maharaj. Jayapataka Maharaj, like 2-3 years when he went to Bangladesh, at one go he initiated 4,000 people. 4,000 people. If you see the photographs, there were like multiple beads that were hanging. Like some good, like in bunch, beads were hanging. And 4,000 people he initiated. He just swept the whole village. So Ramanujacharya had this track record. Wherever he went, he would sweep the whole village. But once, he went to a particular village and he tried preaching there. And somehow things didn't work. People were not accepting. None of them were accepting. So Ramanujacharya was thinking to himself, how is it that everywhere I'm going, people are accepting? This one village, people are not accepting. What is the problem? And then he called his disciple, Dasarathi. He called his disciple Dasarathi and said, please come here. And Dasarathi said, yes, Guru Maharaj, what do you want? What do you ask of me? What do you want me to do? He said, go and wash your feet in the local river. He said, go and wash my feet in the river? I can tap yahan bhi hai, main yahan yahin pair dho leta hu. No, Ramanujacharya said, no, go to the river and wash your feet. He said, why? I can do it as well here. He said, just do as I'm saying. Go to the river and wash your feet. So this disciple Dasarathi, he went and he washed his feet in the local river. And after he came back, within 3 or 4 days, the whole village who were Bahirmukha, who were not ready to listen to Ramanujacharya, they all came and fell at the feet of Ramanujacharya, begging for initiation. My dear Guru Maharaj, please accept us. So Dasarathi, when he saw this, he was amazed. He said, what just happened? 3-4 days back, none of them were devoted, and now all of them are begging the shelter of your lotus feet. What just happened? Dasarathi couldn't understand. Actually, what had happened, Ramanujacharya was so intelligent that when he asked Dasarathi to go and wash his feet in the river, Dasarathi was equally so exalted. Ramanujacharya knew that if he washes his feet in that river will end up going into the taps of all the people. And because Dasarathi is so exalted, they will not drink water, but they will drink Charanamrit. And that Charanamrit of Dasarathi will end up transforming the hearts of everyone. So when Dasarathi understood that Guru Maharaj he could see so far ahead, he fell at the feet of Ramanujacharya. That is Guru Bhakti. He did not doubt that, why is my Guru Maharaj asking me to do it? He simply followed it, and that instruction enabled Ramanujacharya to make the whole village into devotees. We see the same point even in Pralhad Bhagavatamrita. Pralhad Bhagavatamrita, we find that one of the most prominent personalities who is described in Pralhad Bhagavatamrita, which is the magnum opus of Sripad Sanatana Goswami, is a cowherd boy by the name Gopakumar. Prabhuji and Mataji would be knowing. They have already read Pralhad Bhagavatamrita.
I heard, not read.
So, Pralhad Bhagavatamrita, one of the prominent characteristics is Gopakumar. Now, interestingly, Gopakumar had practically no association of his Guru Maharaj. Even though his Guru Maharaj was there on this planet, like most of us, we see our Sri Guru is always traveling from one place to another. And likewise, for Gopakumar, his Guru Maharaj was always traveling. So he had practically no association. The only 2 associations that he had was the first time when he got initiated. Guru Maharaj gave him mantra. He gave him Gopal mantra. Or in our case, Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. He gave him the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. But there was no instruction as such. But Gopakumar, living in Govardhan, in one corner, no one practically knew Gopakumar. He was just sitting at one place and chanting the mantra that his Guru Maharaj had given him. With complete faith and conviction that this mantra which my Guru Maharaj has given, this will give me perfection. Finally, when his Guru Maharaj was wrapping up his pastimes and going back home, back to Godhead, his Guru Maharaj came and met Gopakumar. And he said that the mantra I have given you, please take it with full faith Don't doubt the power potency of this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra or the Gopal Mantra. Just keep chanting this mantra. Very soon you will not only go back to Krishna, you will also establish your lost, dormant relationship with Krishna. Have complete faith. This was the only instruction Gopakumar's spiritual master gave. Like most of us, some may have got personal instruction, but predominantly most of us do not have a personal instructions that do this or do that. And Gopakumar took that instruction, that one instruction, he took that to heart. And he was chanting. For many years in one cave of Giriraj, Gopakumar was sitting and chanting. And that mantra, which is Guru Maharaj gave, enabled him, empowered him. Gopakumar, it is described, when he is going back, he goes through all the upper planetary systems. Om Bhuhu, Bhuva, Swaha, Janaha, Tapaha, Satyam. He crosses everything. And finally, he even sees Vaikuntha, he sees Vishnu, he sees Lakshmi. And then finally, he enters Golok Vrindavan. And Gopakumar is Krishna's very dear, long lost friend. And when Krishna sees Gopakumar, Krishna starts weeping. Where were you, Gopakumar? I waited for you for such a long time. Why did you delay so much? And Krishna embraces him tightly. And we find this is the front cover of the Pralhad Bhagavatamrita. Krishna embracing Gopakumar tightly. That Gopakumar, who had practically no association with spiritual master, just by chanting the mantra, having complete Guru Nishtha, he ended up not just going back to Godhead, but becoming Krishna's very dear friend. So much so that Sanatana Goswami writes volume after volume describing the glories of Gopakumar. Why? Because of Guru Devat Atma. He considered his Guru as Devat Atma. Atma means soul. Guru Devat Atma means to consider our Guru Maharaj life and soul. This is the aim of devotional life. This is the aim of Krishna consciousness. If there is no Guru Bhakti, there can never be Krishna Bhakti. Guru Bhakti is the backbone of Krishna Bhakti. If we aren't worshipping our spiritual master, if we aren't hearing the lectures and kirtans of our Guru Maharaj, we can hardly expect to make any spiritual advancement in Krishna Bhakti. That spiritual master who is coming down, Sakshat Haritvena Samasta Shastra, he is Sakshat Hari. For all of us, he is coming down only to rescue. And then if we don't take shelter of such an exalted Mahabhagat Vaishnava, if we don't consider him Guru Devatatma, if we don't consider him our life and soul, then there will be fear, there will be lamentation, there will be forgetfulness, there will be vimukata, turning our back on Krishna, and our mind will be absorbed on things of this world. So the only solution Shukadeva Goswami gives is Guru Devatatma. This is the essence of this whole verse, Guru Devatatma. To consider our spiritual master life and soul, to consider him our Atma, worshipping him, Sakshat Hari. Like Gaur Govinda Maharaj would say, it's not just lip service. When we say Sakshat Haritvena Samasta Shastra in the morning, it's not just lip service. It's a point of realizing the fact that the spiritual master from whom I have taken Diksha is not different from that Supreme Lord. And he alone can help me from Asmriti, he alone can help me from Nishad Apetasya Viparyaha, and he alone can help me from Dvitiya Abhinivesh, and he alone can help me from Bhayam, fear. So now if you read the translation, things will make sense. Can someone read the translation loud so that everyone hears? Loud and little slow.
Fear arises when a living entity misidentifies himself.
Can everyone just hear just for a few minutes? Yes, Prabhuji.
Fear arises when a living entity misidentifies himself.
Misidentifies. What is the example? Tomato. Tomato example. Misidentification. Yes, Prabhu.
Himself as the material body because of absorption in the external.
Absorption in the external means Dvitiya Abhinivesha. Absorption in the second, external.
External illusory energy of the Lord. When the living entity thus turns away from the Supreme Lord,
That is Ishadapetasya Viparyaha,
he also forgets his own constitutional position
which is Asmriti.
as a servant of the Lord. This bewildering, fearful condition
Fearful condition means bhayam.
Is affected by the potency for illusion called Maya.
Mayayato.
Therefore, an intelligent person
Buddha. Buddha means intelligent.
should engage unflinchingly in the unalloyed devotional service of the Lord under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master whom he should accept as his worshipable deity and as his very life and soul.
Whom he should accept as his worshipable deity and his life and soul. Bhaktiyaika yesham gurudevatama. Considering Sri Guru as our life and soul. Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Sri Guru Tattva ki Jai. Sri Ramananda Raya disappearance ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Gaura Premanande